Hello, and here is our last section on the cell. And this is a fun section because we get to look at the eukaryotic cell. It has a little more complexity than the prokaryotic cell, actually quite a lot more complexity. And we're going to look specifically at all the different organelles and all the parts of the cell. So let's go to the next slide. First, we're going to look at the large dark spot in the middle of the cell. Oftentimes when you look through the microscope, you see a very large dark spot. That's the nucleus. And the nucleus in a cell is referred to as the control center. That's because it contains most of the cell's genetic information in the chromosomes in the cell. And so it's called the control center. The smaller dark blot inside of the nucleus is the nucleolus. And its job is to put together ribosomes, and we'll talk about ribosomes later. They are organelles within the cell. The nuclear envelope is the membrane that surrounds the nucleus. So now let's look at the cytoskeleton. There are a lot of parts to the cytoskeleton. It provides shape and enables movement. And first let's look at the flagella, because a lot of you have seen pictures of it and you tend to call it a tail. Here's a picture of a flagellum. That's singular for flagella. And this single-celled organism has one flagellum. And if you didn't know or hadn't guessed already, the flagellum provides an ability for that cell to move. And the movement of the flagellum propels the cell about. Cilia are basically short flagella. And here's a picture of a cell that has cilia covering it. And they're just little short flagella, and they also enable movement. Microtubules, here's it on the diagram, picture of a microtubule here. That enables movement, and a microfilament on the outside of the structure basically maintains structure for the cell. We have centrioles, which is right here, this yellow organelle right there. It's formed from the microtubules, and the centrioles play a role in cell division. We're not really going to go into that any further than that, just that cell division is part of their function. One other important organelle, if you will, that I didn't mention is the plasma membrane, and it surrounds the entire cell and maintains the integrity of the cell. It keeps the inside on the inside and the outside on the outside. So the plasma membrane is also sometimes referred to as the cell membrane. Those are the same thing. Okay, let's look at the cytosol. Sometimes it's called the cytoplasma, or the cytoplasm. Those are both valid terms to refer to the jelly-like material inside the cell. And it's semi-fluid because it's not completely fluid like water. It's more gelatinous in texture and makeup, and it basically surrounds all of the organelles within the cell. So let's look at some of the specific organelles within the cell. Let's actually start with the ribosomes. Ribosomes, right here on our diagram, ribosomes are these tiny little red dots on your diagram, and they make proteins. So that is their job, and if you can see, they are very closely associated with this blue organelle. That blue organelle right there is the endoplasmic reticulum, big long word. Oftentimes it's abbreviated capital E, capital R for short. And part of the endoplasmic reticulum is covered with these ribosomes, and part of it is not. And when you actually look at a cell through a microscope, the portion of the ER that has ribosomes all over it looks bumpy and kind of rough. So that's called rough endoplasmic reticulum. The portion that does not have ribosomes all over it looks smooth, so it's called smooth endoplasmic reticulum. The endoplasmic reticulum overall transports different molecules to wherever they need to go inside of the cell. and that's their job. The Golgi apparatus is the next organelle we'll look at. It's right here in green. It's not actually green. I'm assuming you know that. They just colored the diagram to make it easier for you to see these different organelles. But the Golgi apparatus is kind of like a post office. It will take in different molecules, it sorts them, packages them, and then sends them out to wherever they need to go within the cell. Lysosomes are right here. They're a smaller spherical organelle, and they're responsible for digesting large particles that come into the cell. Mitochondria are represented in our cell in the red and orange colors here. A singular mitochondrion is spelled mitochondrion. Plural is mitochondria. They are called powerhouses of the cell. And they are called powerhouses because they convert energy into usable forms within the cell. Okay, so now that you know so many things about the cell, which I think is very fascinating actually, because as your body, you can see your whole body and you know you have organs in your body. Every single one of your cells also has its own special organs that perform all these necessary functions. This is not a human cell, this is a plant cell, but it's just kind of like the human body in microcosm with all those little organelles performing all of the functions that that cell needs in order to live. What does a plant cell have, though, that is different from an animal cell? And there are three really main items that it has that a plant cell does not. And the first one we're going to talk about is the cell wall. So a plant cell does have a cell membrane, just like an animal cell, but it also has a cell wall on the outside of it. And it provides rigidity, and it makes it very difficult for the cell to change shape very easily. It enables pressure control so that the plant cell is able to control water pressure within itself. A plant cell, secondly, has really large vacuoles. So a vacuole is a space, and here it's represented in purple, but a plant cell can have a vacuole that is so large it can be 50% of its volume. So plant cells can have extremely large vacuoles. They just store different nutrients or waste and for transport in or out of the cell. The third thing plant cells have are chloroplasts. Animal cells do not have chloroplasts because they do not carry out photosynthesis. And plant cells use chloroplasts for carrying out photosynthesis. So what do animal cells have that plant cells do not? And they have one feature, the centrioles, that plant cells do not have. And remember, those were important in cell division. Here are some ideas for advanced proficiency that you can read over. And I know this is a lot of information, and hopefully your cell models and cell diagrams will just help you get familiar with all of these different organelles. And we'll just have to study hard and memorize all these different organelles and parts of the cell. So we'll see you in class.